the 13th century, a family of wool merchants in Florence had an idea so powerful, it would eventually control the finances of popes, fund wars between kings, and reshape the entire European economy. They weren't born into power. They didn't inherit gold. They started in a wool shop. But within 3 generations, the Medici family became so wealthy that monarchs begged them for loans, and so powerful that they could start a war by simply refusing one. The question isn't how they made their first fortune. Every generation produces people who make money. The real question is, how did they keep it and expand it for over 300 years? After studying the Medici, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and every dynasty that held power for centuries, 5 patterns keep appearing. The same rules, over and over. Across different cultures, different centuries, different economic systems. Most people today are doing the exact opposite of all 5. Here is the system. Rule number 1. The Invisibility Principle. When Nathan Rothschild made one of the most profitable trades in financial history, betting on Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo before anyone else knew the outcome, he didn't celebrate. He didn't announce it. He didn't display his wealth. He hid it. Old money has one rule that new money almost always breaks. The wealthy don't look wealthy. The Medici funded massive art commissions and built cathedrals, but their actual fortunes stayed invisible. The Rockefellers gave away billions publicly, while quietly accumulating assets worth 20 times more. The Rothschilds spread their operations across 5 countries under 5 different suns. In every case, the real power was invisible. The display was strategic, never accidental. Visible wealth attracts enemies, taxation, and resentment. Invisible wealth compounds quietly. The first move every durable dynasty ever made was to separate their display of wealth from their actual wealth. Most people signal money before they have it. Every lasting dynasty hid money even after they had more than they could ever spend. Rule 1 is obvious in hindsight. But Rule 2 is where almost everyone trying to build wealth makes a fatal mistake. One that has already been costing them for years, without them ever realizing it. Rule number 2. The patience paradox. The Medici didn't build their banking empire in a decade. It took over 50 years across 2 generations before they truly dominated European finance. The Rockefellers spent 20 years quietly acquiring smaller oil companies before Standard Oil became untouchable. The dynasties that lasted centuries thought in decades. Most people today think in quarters. Here is the paradox. In a world obsessed with speed, patience has become the rarest competitive advantage on Earth. Warren Buffett made 99% of his entire net worth after the age of 65. Not because he suddenly got smarter, because compounding had finally reached the point where the numbers became incomprehensible. Every dynasty that lasted understood one thing most people never internalize. Building real wealth is not a sprint toward a finish line. It is a permanent expansion with no ceiling. Rule number 3. The network principle. When the Medici needed to move money across borders, before wire transfers, before digital banking, they used letters of credit. Pieces of paper redeemable at Medici branches across all of Europe. This wasn't just clever banking. It was a network. The Rothschilds placed sons in Frankfurt, London, Paris, Vienna, and Naples. Not to compete with each other, but to cover every major financial center simultaneously. Power isn't held by individuals. It's held by networks. In every century, the dynasties that survived weren't the richest individuals. They were the most connected systems. 3 rules down. And these 3 alone would put most people ahead of 95% of the population. But Rule 4 is the one that makes financially educated people genuinely uncomfortable, because it requires completely rewriting what you were taught about debt. And Rule 5 explains why most wealth built today will be completely gone within 2 generations, including yours, if you don't understand what comes next. Rule number 4. The debt weapon. Most people are taught that debt is dangerous. Avoid it. Pay it off fast. Stay clean. The Medici built an empire using other people's money. The Rothschilds didn't give governments gold. They gave them credit. And the interest on that credit, compounded across decades, was worth more than the original sum many times over. Here's the distinction that separates the wealthy from everyone else. Consumer debt destroys wealth. Productive debt multiplies it. The Rockefellers borrowed to buy oil fields, borrowed to build refineries, borrowed to eliminate competitors. Every single loan was backed by a projected return that exceeded the cost of borrowing. The dynasties that lasted didn't avoid debt. They weaponized it. They borrowed at the lowest possible cost to acquire assets that generated returns far above the interest rate. The spread between those two numbers, compounded over decades, is how real fortunes are constructed. Most people use debt to buy things that lose value. The dynasties use debt to buy things that generate value. That is the entire difference. Rule number 5. The succession secret. There is an old saying in finance: the first generation builds wealth. The second generation maintains it. The third generation destroys it. Across almost every culture, this pattern appears with frightening regularity. American industrial dynasties, European banking empires, Chinese merchant families, Japanese trading houses. The third generation almost universally collapses what the first two built. The dynasties that broke this pattern, the ones that lasted 5 and 10 generations, all did one specific thing differently. They didn't give their children money. They gave them frameworks. The Rothschilds didn't just pass down assets. They passed down a philosophy of wealth. Specific rules about how to evaluate risk, how to diversify, how to keep family interests aligned, even when individual interests pulled in different directions. The Medici codified their approach to business across generations. It wasn't inheritance. It was education into a system. Every dynasty that collapsed failed because the third generation received the result of wealth without ever learning the thinking that created it. Every dynasty that survived passed down the mental model, not just the money. 5 rules, 500 years. Same pattern repeating. Here's what applying all 5 looks like today. The Invisibility Principle. Separate your actual financial position from what you show the world. Stop signaling wealth you are still building. Let your money move in silence. The Patience Paradox. Evaluate every financial decision across decades, not months. Ask yourself, what does this look like in 20 years? Most bad financial decisions fail this test immediately. The Network Principle. Your financial trajectory will eventually match the average of your closest relationships. This is not motivational advice. It is historical pattern. Every dynasty expanded because they built a network of trust before they expanded their capital. The debt weapon. Never borrow for consumption. Only consider debt when the asset you are acquiring generates a clear return above the cost of borrowing. If you cannot calculate that number, you do not take the debt. The succession secret. Whatever system you build, document the thinking behind it. Not just what you do, why you do it. The only wealth worth building is wealth that outlasts you. The Medici started in a wool shop in Florence. The Rothschilds started from a single street stall in Frankfurt. The Rockefellers started with $50 and a ledger book. What separated them from everyone else was not luck, not birth, not circumstance. It was a framework, applied with patience, compounded over time. 5 rules, used by every dynasty that built wealth that actually lasted. The first generation builds. The second maintains. The third destroys. Unless the third generation understands the system. Now you do.